Part 1. The Abandoned Foal. The morning sun was just breaking through the clouds when old Ben walked into his barn. He had been running Sunset Farm for over 30 years, and he thought he had seen everything, but nothing could have prepared him for what happened that April morning. His best mare, Luna, was giving birth. Ben had been waiting for this foal for months. Luna came from good bloodlines, and he hoped this baby horse would help save his struggling farm. Money was tight, and he needed something good to happen. But as the foal was born, Ben's heart sank. The little baby horse's front legs were twisted and bent in ways that weren't normal. The legs looked weak and deformed. Ben had never seen anything like it in all his years of farming. He called Dr. Wilson, the local animal doctor, who arrived within an hour. The vet examined the newborn foal carefully, checking every part of the tiny body. The baby was breathing well and seemed healthy otherwise, but those front legs were a serious problem. "I'm sorry, Ben," Dr. Wilson said, shaking his head. "This foal will never be able to walk properly. Those legs can't support any weight. The kindest thing would be to put him down now, before he suffers more." Ben stared at the little foal lying in the hay. The baby horse was trying to stand, just like all newborn foals do, but he kept falling over. His back legs seemed strong, but those front legs couldn't hold him up. It was heartbreaking to watch. "Are you sure there's nothing we can do?" Ben asked, though he already knew the answer. He had dealt with injured animals before, and he understood when a situation was hopeless. "I've seen cases like this before," the vet replied. "Surgery might help a little, but it would cost thousands of dollars, and the foal still wouldn't have a normal life. He'd always struggle to move around. It's not fair to let him live like that." Ben nodded slowly. He understood, but it didn't make the decision any easier. He was a practical man who had made tough choices about animals before, but this felt different somehow. Maybe it was because he had hoped for so much from this foal. "I can't watch," Ben told his farm worker, Jake. "Take care of it for me. Do it quickly so he doesn't suffer." Jake had worked on the farm for 5 years. He was a good man who cared about animals, but he also understood the realities of farm life. Sometimes hard decisions had to be made. He nodded and prepared to take the foal away from its mother. Luna seemed to sense what was happening. She kept trying to nudge her baby with her nose, making soft sounds that horses make when they're worried. It was clear she loved her foal, even though he was different. Jake gently lifted the small foal, who weighed about 60 pounds. The baby horse didn't struggle much. He seemed tired from trying to stand. Jake carried him out of the barn while Ben stayed inside, not wanting to see what came next. But as Jake walked toward the back of the property, something inside him changed. He looked down at the foal in his arms. The little guy's eyes were bright and alert. He wasn't sick or dying. He was just different. Jake had a soft spot for animals that needed help. His own dog at home was missing a leg from an accident, but that dog was the happiest animal Jake had ever known. Jake reached the far pasture where no one from the farm would see him. He was supposed to end the foal's life quickly and quietly. That's what Ben expected, and that's what most people would say was the right thing to do. Instead, Jake made a choice that would surprise everyone. He gently placed the foal in the tall grass near an old oak tree. The area had some shelter from wind, and there was a small stream nearby for water. Jake knew it probably wouldn't make much difference. A newborn foal couldn't survive alone in the wild. But he couldn't bring himself to kill a healthy baby animal, even one with bad legs. "Maybe someone will find you," Jake whispered to the foal. "Maybe you'll have better luck out here." Jake returned to the barn and told Ben the job was done. Ben asked no questions and seemed relieved to put the sad situation behind him. The farm had other problems to worry about, and dwelling on one unlucky foal wouldn't help anything. Meanwhile, about 2 miles away, a 12-year-old boy named Tommy was having the worst day of his life. Actually, he was having the worst month of his life. Tommy had been living in foster homes since he was 7 years old. His parents died in a car accident, and he had no other family who could take care of him. Over the years, he had lived with 6 different families. Some were nice, some were not so nice, but none of them felt like home. His latest foster family, the Johnsons, had seemed different at first. They lived in a small town surrounded by farms and countryside. Mr. Johnson worked at the hardware store, and Mrs. Johnson was a nurse. They had told Tommy they wanted to adopt him and make him part of their real family. But last month, Mrs. Johnson found out she was pregnant with their first biological child. Everything changed after that. They didn't say it directly, but Tommy could tell they didn't want him anymore. They wanted to focus on their own baby who was coming. The social worker, Ms. Rodriguez, came to pick up Tommy on a rainy Tuesday morning. She tried to be cheerful and told him about another foster family who might take him in. But Tommy had heard this before. He was tired of being passed from home to home like an unwanted package. This new family lives in the city, Ms. Rodriguez explained as they drove. The Andersons have experience with older kids. I think you'll like them. But when they arrived at the Anderson house, Tommy could tell right away that this wasn't going to work either. Mr. Anderson looked annoyed, like having Tommy there was an interruption to his day. Mrs. Anderson seemed nervous and kept talking too fast about rules and chores. Their teenage son looked at Tommy like he was some kind of problem that had been dumped on their doorstep. The family had 3 other foster kids already, and the house felt crowded and chaotic. Tommy lasted exactly 18 days with the Andersons. On the 18th day, after another argument about his attitude and another lecture about being grateful, Tommy made a decision. He packed his few belongings in an old backpack and slipped out of the house before dawn. He had run away from foster homes twice before, but those times he was younger and scared. This time felt different. Tommy was older now, and he was tired of pretending that these temporary families could ever feel like real homes. He decided he would rather take care of himself than keep moving from house to house. Tommy had always been smart and resourceful. He knew how to find food and shelter, at least for a while. He also knew that if the authorities caught him, they would just put him in another foster home or maybe even a group home, which he had heard was even worse. So Tommy headed for the countryside, away from the city where people might recognize him as a runaway. He had some money saved from odd jobs, enough to buy food for a few days. He figured he could find work on a farm or something until he turned 18 and aged out of the foster system. For 3 weeks, Tommy had been living rough. He slept in abandoned barns, under bridges, or anywhere else he could find shelter. He ate from garbage cans behind restaurants and convenience stores. It wasn't a good life, but it was his choice, and that felt better than being shuffled around by adults who didn't really want him. The only thing Tommy owned that meant something to him was an old veterinary textbook he had found in a dumpster behind the community college. The book was damaged and missing some pages, but it was full of information about taking care of animals. Tommy had always loved animals more than people. Animals didn't lie to you or promise things they couldn't deliver. He spent his evenings reading the vet book by flashlight, learning about different animals and their needs. It was his dream to become an animal doctor someday, though that seemed impossible for a homeless kid with no family and no money for college. On this particular morning, Tommy was looking for a place to sleep during the day. He preferred to move around at night when fewer people were awake to ask questions. He had spotted an old grain storage building that looked abandoned, and he thought it might be a good place to rest. But as he walked across the field toward the building, he heard a sound that made him stop. It was a weak crying noise like a baby animal in distress. Tommy looked around and saw movement in the tall grass near a big oak tree. What he found there would change his life forever. Lying in the grass was the smallest, most helpless horse he had ever seen. The foal was clearly just born, maybe a few hours old at most. His coat was still damp and he was shivering in the cool morning air. But what caught Tommy's attention immediately were the foal's front legs. They were twisted and bent, obviously not normal. The baby horse was trying to stand up just like his instincts told him to do. But every time he tried, he would fall over because his front legs couldn't support him. He would cry out in frustration, then try again. It was clear he wasn't going to give up, even though his efforts weren't working. Tommy knelt down beside the foal and gently touched his neck. The baby horse was warm but weak. His breathing was fast and shallow, and Tommy could tell he was getting tired from trying so hard to stand. "What are you doing out here all alone?" Tommy asked softly. He looked around for the mother horse, but there was no sign of any adult horses nearby. This foal had been abandoned, just like Tommy had been abandoned by so many families. Tommy had read enough of his veterinary book to know that newborn foals needed their mother's milk within the first few hours of Part 2. An Unlikely Bond. The abandoned grain storage building was bigger than Tommy had expected. The roof had some holes that let in light, but it also kept out most of the rain and wind. There were old wooden boards and some rusty equipment scattered around, but Tommy found a corner that seemed safe and dry. He gently placed the foal on a pile of old burlap sacks he found. The baby horse was still wrapped in Tommy's jacket, and he seemed a little calmer now that he was out of the cold morning air. But Tommy could tell he was getting weaker. Tommy opened his veterinary textbook and started reading by the light coming through the roof. He found the section about newborn foals and learned some scary facts. Baby horses needed to drink their mother's milk within 6 hours of being born, or they might not survive. They also needed something called colostrum, which was special milk that only came from the mother in the first day. "This is really bad," Tommy said to himself, looking at the weak foal. "You need your mom's milk, and I don't know where to find any." But Tommy wasn't the type of person to give up easily. He had learned to solve problems on his own during his years in foster care. He started thinking about what he could do with no money and no car. He remembered seeing a small dairy farm about 2 miles back down the road. Maybe they would have milk he could use. It wouldn't be horse milk, but the book said cow milk could work in an emergency if it was mixed with some other things. Tommy hated to leave the foal alone, but he needed to find food for both of them. He made the baby horse as comfortable as possible, then set out walking toward the dairy farm. The sun was getting higher now, and Tommy had to be careful not to be seen by too many people. A 12-year-old boy walking alone on country roads would attract attention, and someone might call the authorities. When he reached the dairy farm, Tommy hid behind some trees and watched for a while. He could see cows in the fields and a big red barn. There was a farmhouse where the family probably lived, but it was early and nobody seemed to be moving around yet. Tommy crept closer to the barn and found what he was looking for: metal milk containers sitting outside waiting to be collected by a truck. He knew taking the milk was stealing, and that made him feel terrible. But his new friend was going to die without food. He found an empty plastic bottle in the farm's trash and carefully filled it with milk from one of the containers. He took just enough for the foal, hoping the farmer wouldn't notice such a small amount missing. On the walk back, Tommy stopped at a convenience store where he had seen the owner throw away expired food. In the dumpster behind the store, he found some old bread and a banana that was too ripe to sell, but still good enough to eat. When Tommy got back to the grain building, he was worried the foal might have died while he was gone, but the baby horse was still breathing, though he seemed even weaker than before. "Okay, little guy, I've got some milk for you," Tommy said softly, "but I need to figure out how to get you to drink it." The veterinary book explained that foals naturally know how to nurse from their mothers, but feeding them with a bottle was different. Tommy didn't have a proper bottle anyway. He looked around the old building and found a clean metal can that he could use as a bowl. He poured some milk into the can and gently lifted the foal's head. At first, the baby horse didn't understand what Tommy was trying to do. He was used to looking for his mother's udder, not drinking from a container. Tommy dipped his finger in the milk and let the foal lick it. The baby horse seemed interested in the taste. Slowly, Tommy guided the foal's mouth toward the can of milk. It took a lot of patience, but eventually the foal started drinking. It wasn't much milk, and it was messy. Most of it ended up on the ground or on Tommy's clothes. But some of it got into the foal's stomach, and that was what mattered. After the feeding, Tommy sat back and really looked at his new friend for the first time. The baby horse was actually quite beautiful, despite his twisted front legs. He had a dark brown coat with white markings on his face and legs. His eyes were large and intelligent, and when he looked at Tommy, it seemed like he understood that this boy was trying to help him. "I need to give you a name," Tommy said. "What should I call you?" Tommy thought about birds that could rise up from difficult situations. He remembered reading a story about a phoenix, a magical bird that could be reborn from ashes when everything seemed hopeless. "How about Phoenix?" Tommy asked. "You're like that bird, aren't you? Everyone thought you were done for, but you're going to rise up and prove them wrong." Phoenix seemed to like his new name. He made a soft sound and tried to nuzzle Tommy's hand with his nose. Over the next few days, Tommy and Phoenix developed a routine. Tommy would leave early in the morning to find food and milk, being very careful not to take too much from any one place. He didn't want to get caught, but he also didn't want to hurt the farmers who were just trying to make a living. He learned which restaurants threw away food at night and which convenience stores had dumpsters with unexpired items. It wasn't a pleasant way to live, but Tommy had gotten used to finding what he needed without asking adults for help. The hardest part was getting enough milk for Phoenix. Baby horses needed to eat every few hours, just like human babies. Tommy was exhausted from making so many trips, but he never complained. Phoenix was depending on him. Tommy also started learning more about Phoenix's condition by reading his veterinary book. The foal's front legs were severely deformed, but they weren't completely useless. Phoenix could put a little weight on one of them, though not much. The other leg was worse and couldn't support any weight at all. But Phoenix's back legs were strong and normal. Tommy noticed that the foal was already trying to figure out how to move around. He would push himself up with his back legs and try to balance on his one semi-good front leg. It looked awkward, but Phoenix was determined to be mobile. "You're not going to let those bad legs stop you, are you?" Tommy said, watching Phoenix practice moving around. "You've got the heart of a fighter." Tommy started helping Phoenix with exercises he read about in his book. He would gently stretch the foal's legs and massage his muscles. He didn't know if it would help, but it seemed like the right thing to do. The weather was getting colder as autumn approached, and Tommy knew they needed to find a better shelter. The grain building was okay for now, but winter would be brutal for both of them. Tommy also realized that Phoenix was growing quickly. He was getting heavier, which made it harder for Tommy to carry him when necessary, and Phoenix's appetite was increasing. Soon, Tommy wouldn't be able to provide enough milk by taking small amounts from different farms. One evening, as Tommy was feeding Phoenix his dinner, he heard voices outside the building. His heart pounded with fear. Had someone discovered their hiding place? Tommy quietly crept to a hole in the wall and looked out. He saw two people walking across the field with flashlights, an adult man and woman. They seemed to be looking for something. "The tracks definitely lead this way," the woman was saying. "Someone's been coming here regularly." Tommy's mind raced. These people might be looking for him. Maybe the dairy farmers had noticed their missing milk and called the police, or maybe his foster family had reported him as a runaway. He looked back at Phoenix, who was sleeping peacefully on the burlap sacks. The foal had grown attached to Tommy and trusted him completely. If Tommy was caught and taken away, what would happen to Phoenix? The voices were getting closer. Tommy had to make a quick decision. Should he try to run with Phoenix even though the foal couldn't move very fast? Should he hide and hope the people would go away? Or should he give up and face whatever consequences were coming? As the footsteps approached the building, Tommy made his choice. He wouldn't abandon Phoenix no matter what happened to him. They had found each other when they both needed help most. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Tommy picked up Phoenix and held him close, ready to protect his friend no matter what. The footsteps stopped right outside the building. Tommy held his breath and waited. But what happened next was something neither Tommy nor Phoenix could have expected. The voices outside weren't angry or threatening. They sounded concerned and gentle. "Hello?" the woman called softly. "Is someone in there? We're not here to hurt you. We just want to help." Tommy didn't know whether to believe them or not. Adults had let him down so many times before. But Phoenix was stirring in his arms, and Tommy realized that his options were limited. Winter was coming. Phoenix was growing bigger and needed more care, and Tommy was exhausted from trying to handle everything alone. Maybe it was time to trust someone, even if it was scary. "We know you're taking care of an animal in there," the man said kindly. "That's very brave of you. But you both might need more help than you can manage alone." Tommy looked down at Phoenix, who was looking back at him with those big, trusting eyes. The foal had already taught Tommy something important about not giving up when things seemed impossible. Maybe Phoenix could also teach him something about accepting help when it was offered with genuine kindness. Taking a deep breath, Tommy stood up with Phoenix in his arms and stepped toward the door of the building. Whatever happened next, he and Phoenix would face it together just like they had faced everything else so far. Part 3. Unexpected help. The woman standing outside the building was older, maybe in her 60s, with gray hair and kind eyes. The man beside her looked like he might be her husband. They both seemed surprised to see a young boy holding a baby horse, but they didn't look angry or threatening. "Oh my," the woman said softly. "Look at you two. You've been taking care of each other, haven't you?" Tommy held Phoenix tighter and took a step back. He had learned not to trust adults too quickly, even ones who seemed nice at first. "Who are you?" he asked. "What do you want?" "I'm Helen," the woman said. "This is my husband, Robert. We live in the white farmhouse about a mile from here. I've been noticing someone walking across our property at odd hours, and I was worried about you." "We're not in trouble," Tommy said quickly. "We're not hurting anyone." Robert smiled gently. "We can see that, son. Actually, we're impressed. Taking care of a newborn foal is hard work, even for adults with experience. You must care about him. Very much." Phoenix made a soft sound and nuzzled against Tommy's neck. The foal seemed to sense that these were good people, but Tommy was still cautious. Helen noticed Phoenix's deformed front legs, and her expression became even more concerned. "This little one has some challenges, doesn't he? Have you been able to get him the care he needs?" "I've been doing my best," Tommy said defensively. "I have a book that tells me what to do." "I'm sure you have," Helen said kindly. "But baby horses need a lot of special care, especially ones with medical issues. Maybe we can help you help him." Tommy wanted to believe them, but he had heard promises from adults before. "I don't need to go back to foster care," he said firmly. "And I won't leave Phoenix. If that's what you're thinking, you can forget it." Helen and Robert looked at each other, and Tommy could see them having a silent conversation with their eyes. Finally, Helen spoke again. "Tommy, we're not going to call social services or try to separate you from your friend here, but you both look like you could use some help. Why don't you come back to our house for tonight? You can get a hot meal and a warm bed, and we can make sure Phoenix gets proper food." "How do you know my name?" Tommy asked suspiciously. "The people at the dairy farm mentioned seeing a boy around your age," Robert explained. "They weren't angry about the missing milk. They were worried about whoever needed it badly enough to take it. We've been looking for you because we wanted to help." Tommy felt his cheeks get hot with embarrassment. He had thought he was being so careful, but people had noticed him anyway. "I was going to pay them back someday," he said quietly. "We know you were," Helen said. "That's not what we're worried about. We're worried about you and this little guy, surviving the winter out here." Tommy looked around at the old grain building that had been their home. The walls had big gaps that let in cold air, and there were no proper facilities for either of them. Winter was still a few months away, but already the nights were getting colder. Phoenix was growing bigger and stronger, but he still needed constant care. Tommy was exhausted from trying to provide everything the foal needed while also taking care of himself. Maybe these people really could help. "If I come with you tonight, can I leave any time I want?" Tommy asked. "Of course," Robert said. "We're not trying to trap you. We just want to offer you a safe place while you figure out what comes next." Tommy made his decision. Phoenix needed proper care, and Tommy was tired of being scared and cold and hungry all the time. Maybe it was worth the risk to trust these people, at least for one night. "Okay," he said, "but Phoenix comes with me. We stay together." "Absolutely," Helen said with a smile. "We have a small barn where Phoenix can be comfortable, and we have experience with horses, so we can help you take better care of him." The walk to Helen and Robert's farmhouse took about 20 minutes. Tommy carried Phoenix the whole way, even though his arms were getting tired. The foal had grown a lot in the weeks they had been together. The farmhouse was small and cozy, with warm light glowing from the windows. Behind it was a red barn that looked well maintained. Tommy could hear horses moving around inside, which made him feel a little better. These people really did know about horses. Helen led them to the barn first, so Tommy could get Phoenix settled. Inside were 3 stalls with adult horses, and one smaller stall that was empty. "This stall is perfect for Phoenix," Robert said, opening the gate. "We can put down fresh bedding and make him a comfortable place to sleep." Tommy was amazed at how nice the barn was. It was clean and dry with plenty of fresh hay and automatic water systems. Phoenix would be much more comfortable here than in the old grain building. But as Tommy placed Phoenix in the stall, the foal started making distressed sounds. He had never been separated from Tommy before, and he didn't understand why he was being put in this strange place. "It's okay, Phoenix," Tommy said, climbing into the stall to sit with his friend. "I'm not leaving you. We're just trying somewhere new." Helen watched this interaction with interest. "He's really bonded to you, isn't he? That's remarkable. Usually, foals only bond that strongly with their mothers." "He didn't have a mother," Tommy said quietly. "I found him when he was just a few hours old. Someone had left him to die." Robert shook his head sadly. "That happens sometimes with foals who are born with problems. People think they're being kind by ending their suffering quickly. But this little guy seems to have plenty of fight in him." Phoenix had calmed down now that Tommy was sitting with him. He was exploring his new stall, trying to figure out how to move around in the larger space. His unusual gait, pushing with his back legs and balancing on one front leg, was actually getting better. "Look at him go," Helen said admiringly. "He's adapted to his disability remarkably well. You've done an excellent job caring for him, Tommy." Tommy felt proud, but also worried. "I don't know if I'm doing everything right. The book I have is missing some pages, and I don't know about a lot of things." "Well, we can help with that," Robert said. "I worked as a veterinary assistant before I retired. Between the three of us, we can make sure Phoenix gets everything he needs." Helen had been preparing something while they talked. She returned with a large bottle filled with what looked like milk, but it smelled different. "This is mare's milk. Replacer," she explained. "It's specially made for orphaned foals. It has all the nutrients Phoenix needs to grow strong and healthy." Phoenix seemed to recognize that this was food, and he drank much more eagerly than he had ever drunk the cow's milk Tommy had been giving him. Within minutes, he had finished the entire bottle. "He was hungrier than I thought," Tommy said, feeling guilty that he hadn't been able to provide better food. "You did the best you could with what you had," Helen reassured him. "That's what matters. Now we can do better together." After Phoenix was settled and fed, Helen and Robert took Tommy to the farmhouse. The kitchen was warm and smelled like home-cooked food. Tommy realized he hadn't had a real meal in weeks. Helen heated up leftover soup and made fresh bread, while Robert found some clean clothes that might fit Tommy. The boy hadn't realized how dirty and thin he had become until he saw himself in the bathroom mirror. The hot shower felt like the greatest luxury Tommy had ever experienced. Clean clothes, warm food, and a soft bed seemed almost too good to be real. But every few minutes, Tommy would look out the window toward the barn to make sure Phoenix was okay. "He'll be fine," Helen said, noticing Tommy's concern. Robert checked on him a few minutes ago. "He's sleeping peacefully." "I need to feed him again in a few hours," Tommy said. "Baby horses eat every few hours, even at night." "I know," Helen said. "We can take turns checking on him so you can get some proper sleep." Tommy wanted to argue that Phoenix was his responsibility, but he was so exhausted he could barely keep his eyes open. It had been weeks since he had felt safe enough to really sleep. "Why are you helping us?" Tommy asked as Helen showed him to a small guest bedroom. Helen sat on the edge of the bed and looked thoughtful. "Robert and I never had children of our own. We always wanted to, but it just didn't happen for us. Over the years, we've helped a lot of animals and people who needed it. It's just who we are. But what if the authorities find out I'm here? Won't you get in trouble?" "We'll deal with that if it happens," Helen said. "Right now, you and Phoenix need help, and we can provide it. That's all that matters." Tommy lay down in the soft bed and pulled the clean blankets up to his chin. Through the window, he could see the barn where Phoenix was sleeping. For the first time in months, Tommy felt like maybe everything would be okay. But as he drifted off to sleep, Tommy couldn't shake the feeling that this was too good to last. Good things didn't usually happen to him. Adults who seemed nice at first often changed their minds when things got complicated. Tommy had learned to protect himself by not getting too attached to anything or anyone, but Phoenix had changed that. The foal had taught Tommy what it meant to care about someone else more than you care about protecting yourself. Now Helen and Robert were offering to help both of them. Tommy wanted to believe they were genuine, but he couldn't help wondering what would happen when they realized how much work Phoenix required, or when they got tired of having a runaway kid in their house. In the barn, Phoenix was also struggling to sleep in his new environment. Part 4. Growing Stronger Together. Tommy woke up the next morning in a panic. For a moment, he couldn't remember where he was. The bed was too soft, the room was too warm, and he couldn't hear Phoenix breathing beside him. Then everything came flooding back. Helen and Robert, the farmhouse, Phoenix sleeping in the barn. Tommy jumped out of bed and ran to the window, still wearing the clean pajamas Helen had given him. Through the glass, he could see Robert walking toward the barn with a bottle of milk replacer. Tommy quickly got dressed and ran outside, his bare feet slapping against the cold morning ground. "Phoenix!" Tommy called as he burst into the barn. The foal was standing in his stall, looking much more alert than he had in weeks. When he heard Tommy's voice, Phoenix made excited sounds and tried to move toward the stall door. "He's been waiting for you," Robert said with a smile. "I fed him about an hour ago, but he kept looking toward the house. I think he was wondering where you went." Tommy climbed into the stall and hugged Phoenix around the neck. The foal nuzzled him affectionately, clearly relieved that his best friend hadn't disappeared. "I'm sorry I wasn't here when you woke up," Tommy said. "I'll never leave you, Phoenix, I promise." Robert watched this reunion with interest. "You know, Tommy, I've been working with horses for 40 years, and I've never seen a bond quite like this one. Phoenix trusts you completely." "He's all I have," Tommy said quietly. "And I'm all he has." "Well, that's not exactly true anymore," Helen said, appearing in the barn doorway with a plate of pancakes for Tommy. "Now you both have us too." Over. The next few weeks, Tommy and Phoenix settled into a routine at Helen and Robert's farm. Tommy learned proper horse care from Robert, who taught him about nutrition, grooming, and basic veterinary skills. Phoenix grew stronger and more confident, learning to navigate his world with his unique way of moving. The most amazing thing was watching Phoenix adapt to his disability. Instead of letting his deformed front legs hold him back, the foal developed an incredible sense of balance. He could move surprisingly fast by pushing off with his strong back legs and using his one partially functional front leg for steering. "He's like a three-wheeled motorcycle," Robert joked one day, watching Phoenix gallop around the small pasture they had set up for him. Different from other horses, but effective in his own way. Tommy was amazed at how much Phoenix could do. The foal could run, play, and even jump small obstacles. He had developed muscles in unusual places to compensate for his disability, making him stronger in some ways than a normal horse. Helen was teaching Tommy other important skills too. She showed him how to cook, do laundry, and manage basic household tasks. Tommy had never learned these things properly in foster care, where he was always seen as a temporary resident. "Every person should know how to take care of themselves," Helen said as she taught Tommy to make bread. "These skills will serve you well no matter what happens in your future." But Tommy was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Adults had disappointed him too many times for him to fully relax and trust this new situation. He kept his backpack packed and ready, just in case he and Phoenix needed to run again. Helen and Robert noticed Tommy's guardedness, but they didn't push him to open up. They just consistently showed him kindness and reliability, hoping that time would help him learn to trust them. The first real test came on a cold October morning when a police car drove up the farm's driveway. Tommy saw it through the kitchen window and immediately grabbed his backpack. "It's okay," Helen said calmly. "That's just Officer Williams. He stops by sometimes to check on us elderly folks." But Tommy was already heading for the back door. "I have to get Phoenix, we need to go." "Tommy, wait," Robert said, blocking the doorway. "You don't need to run, let's see what Officer Williams wants first." Against his better judgment, Tommy stayed hidden in the kitchen while Helen went to talk to the policeman. Through the window, Tommy could see them having a conversation, but he couldn't hear what they were saying. After about 10 minutes, Officer Williams got back in his car and drove away. Helen returned to the kitchen with a serious expression on her face. He was asking about a runaway boy who might be in the area, Helen said honestly. Someone from the city has been making calls to local police departments. Tommy felt his heart sink. They're looking for me. I have to leave before I get you in trouble. You're not going anywhere, Helen said firmly. Officer Williams is a good man. I told him we hadn't seen any runaway boys, which is technically true. You're not running anymore. You're staying here with us. But what if he comes back? What? If other people start asking questions? Robert sat down at the kitchen table and gestured for Tommy to join him. Son, Helen and I have been talking about this situation. We know you can't hide forever. Eventually, we need to find a legal way for you to stay here. There is no legal way, Tommy said bitterly. I'm a ward of the state. They'll just put me in another foster home and Phoenix will be sent somewhere else. Probably put down since nobody wants a disabled horse. Helen and Robert looked at each other, and Tommy could see they had already discussed this possibility. What if we applied to be your foster family? Helen asked quietly. Officially, I mean. We're approved for emergency placements and we have experience with kids who need extra help. Tommy stared at them in shock. You would do that? Even knowing all the trouble it would cause? Tommy, Robert said. You and Phoenix have already caused us trouble. Good trouble. The kind of trouble that makes life meaningful. Helen and I have been lonely since we retired. Taking care of you two has given us a purpose we didn't know we were missing. But I'm not easy to deal with, Tommy warned them. I have problems. I don't trust people easily and I get angry sometimes and I don't like to follow rules that don't make sense. Helen laughed. Honey, you just described most teenagers. Plus, you've been taking care of a disabled foal while living on the streets. I think we can handle whatever problems you think you have. For the first time since his parents died, Tommy felt like maybe he had found adults who actually wanted him around for the long term. Not because they felt sorry for him, or because they were getting paid to take care of him, but because they genuinely cared about him and Phoenix. But Tommy had learned not to get his hopes up too high. Foster placements could fall apart for all kinds of reasons, and adult promises weren't always kept. What about Phoenix? Tommy asked. Foster families don't usually allow kids to keep horses. Phoenix isn't just any horse, Robert pointed out. He's a special needs animal who requires specialized care. And you're the person best qualified to provide that care. Any social worker with common sense should be able to see that separating you two would be harmful to both of you. Over the next few days, Helen and Robert started making phone calls to social services, explaining Tommy's situation and their desire to provide a permanent home for him. It was complicated because Tommy had run away from his previous placement, but Helen was persuasive when she wanted to be. Meanwhile, Tommy continued working with Phoenix, who was developing new abilities almost daily. The foal had figured out how to rear up on his back legs, which made him look much bigger and more impressive than his disability might suggest. He's showing off for you, Robert observed one afternoon as Phoenix performed his rearing trick repeatedly. He knows you're proud of him. Tommy was proud of Phoenix, but he was also starting to understand something deeper about their relationship. Phoenix had never known what it was like to be a normal horse, so he didn't spend time feeling sorry for himself or wishing he were different. He just focused on what he could do with the body he had. Maybe Phoenix has been teaching me something, Tommy said to Helen one evening as they watched the foal play in his pasture. I've been so focused on everything that's wrong with my life that I haven't thought much about what I can do with it. Helen nodded. That little horse has wisdom beyond his months. He's showing all of us that disabilities don't have to mean limitations if you're creative and determined enough. The breakthrough came when Dr. Martinez, a veterinarian who specialized in equine rehabilitation, came to examine Phoenix. Helen had contacted her to get a professional assessment of the foal's condition and future prospects. Dr. Martinez spent 2 hours examining Phoenix, watching him move and testing his strength and coordination. Tommy stayed close to Phoenix the entire time, helping keep the foal calm during the unfamiliar procedures. This is remarkable, Dr. Martinez said finally. I've never seen a foal with this severe of a leg deformity, develop such effective compensation strategies. His muscle development is extraordinary. Does that mean he's going to be okay? Tommy asked anxiously. More than okay, Dr. Martinez said. With proper care and continued physical therapy, Phoenix could live a completely normal lifespan. He'll never be able to do everything a typical horse can do, but he's already doing things that most people would have thought impossible. Dr. Martinez turned to Tommy with an impressed expression. Young man, what you've accomplished with this foal is truly exceptional. You have natural instincts for animal rehabilitation that can't be taught. Have you ever thought about becoming a veterinarian? Tommy felt his cheeks get hot. I'd like to, but I don't think it's possible. I'm just a foster kid with no money for. Part 5. A New Beginning. 2 years had passed since that cold October morning when Tommy first found Phoenix in the tall grass. Now 14 years old, Tommy looked completely different from the scared, skinny boy who had been living in abandoned buildings. He was taller, healthier, and most importantly, he had learned to smile again. Phoenix had grown too, but in ways that amazed everyone who met him. The young horse was now almost full-sized, with powerful muscles and a confident personality. His unique way of moving had become so natural that visitors often didn't notice his disability until someone pointed it out. The legal process of making Tommy a permanent part of Helen and Robert's family had taken almost a year, but it had worked out better than anyone expected. The social workers were impressed by Tommy's stability and progress in his new home. His grades in school had improved dramatically, and he was already taking advanced science classes with an eye toward veterinary school. But the most convincing argument for letting Tommy stay had been Phoenix himself. When the social workers saw the remarkable bond between the boy and the disabled horse, they understood that separating them would be harmful to both. This isn't just a kid with a pet horse, the caseworker had written in her report. This is a therapeutic relationship that has helped both the child and the animal overcome significant challenges. The foster family has provided an environment where both can thrive. Helen and Robert had officially adopted Tommy on his 13th birthday, making him a legal member of their family. It was the best birthday present Tommy had ever received, the knowledge that he finally had a permanent home and parents who had chosen him. Phoenix had become something of a local celebrity. Word had spread about the disabled foal who had learned to run and play despite his deformed legs. People came from neighboring towns just to see him, and many left inspired by his determination and joy. Dr. Martinez, the veterinarian who had first examined Phoenix, had become a mentor to Tommy. She visited the farm regularly and had started including Tommy in some of her work with other animals. Tommy's natural ability with horses had only grown stronger over time. "You have a gift," Dr. Martinez told Tommy one day as they worked together to help an injured mare. "Some people study animal behavior for years and never develop the instincts. You have naturally." Tommy was learning about different types of animal therapy and rehabilitation. He had discovered that horses like Phoenix could help people with their own disabilities and challenges. Animals that had overcome difficulties themselves seemed to understand human struggles in unique ways. The idea came to Tommy gradually, but once he thought of it, he couldn't let it go. What if they could create a program that brought together animals who needed help with people who needed help? What if Phoenix could use his own experiences to help other kids who felt abandoned or different? Tommy presented his idea to Helen and Robert over dinner one evening. "I want to start a program where kids can work with animals who have disabilities or problems," he said. "Like Phoenix and me. We could help each other." Helen and Robert looked at each other with the same expression they had shared that first night Tommy arrived. They were thinking the same thing. This boy never stopped amazing them with his compassion and wisdom. "Tell us more about this idea," Robert said encouragingly. "Well," Tommy continued, getting excited, "there are lots of kids in foster care who feel like nobody wants them. And there are lots of animals who get abandoned because they're not perfect. But sometimes the kids and animals who have problems are actually the strongest ones because they've had to learn how to survive difficult situations." Tommy's enthusiasm was contagious. Phoenix could be the main horse in the program. He could show other kids that being different doesn't mean you can't do amazing things. And I could teach them how to take care of animals, which is something that makes you feel important and needed. Helen was already making notes on a piece of paper. We'd need proper insurance and certifications, she said, and we'd have to work with social services to identify kids who might benefit from this kind of program. Dr. Martinez could help us with the animal care training, Robert added, and we have enough land here to expand if the program grows. Over the next year, Tommy's dreams slowly became reality. With help from Helen, Robert, Dr. Martinez, and several other adults who believed in the program, they established the Phoenix Foundation, a non-profit organization that paired at-risk youth with animals who needed special care. The first group of kids arrived on a warm spring morning. There were 6 of them, all between the ages of 10 and 15, all from challenging backgrounds. Some were in foster care, some had family problems, and some had disabilities of their own. Tommy was nervous as he introduced them to Phoenix. What if the other kids didn't understand what made Phoenix special? What if they thought he was just a weird-looking horse? But Phoenix, now 3 years old and full of personality, knew exactly how to win them over. He performed his signature rearing trick, then trotted around the pasture with his unique gait, clearly showing off for his new audience. "He's so cool," said Amy, a 12-year-old girl who had been in 7 different foster homes. "How does he move like that?" Tommy explained Phoenix's story and demonstrated how the horse had adapted to his disability. The kids were fascinated and wanted to try helping with Phoenix's daily care. Over the following weeks, Tommy watched amazing transformations happen. Kids who had been labeled as difficult or problematic blossomed when given the responsibility of caring for animals. They learned patience, consistency, and the reward of working hard to help someone else. Phoenix seemed to understand his role as the program's leader. He was gentle with nervous kids and playful with confident ones. He never made anyone feel stupid for asking questions, and he always seemed to know when someone needed extra attention. One of the most remarkable success stories was Kevin, a 15-year-old who had been getting into trouble at school and at home. Kevin's parents had divorced when he was young, and he had been bounced between relatives who didn't really want him. Kevin was angry when he first arrived at the farm. He didn't want to be there, didn't think horses were cool, and made it clear that he expected this to be just another disappointing experience with adults who were trying to help him. But Phoenix wore down Kevin's resistance with persistent friendliness. The horse would follow Kevin around the pasture, gently nudging him for attention even when Kevin tried to ignore him. "Why does he keep bothering me?" Kevin asked Tommy one day. "Because he likes you," Tommy replied. Phoenix can tell when someone needs a friend, even if they're trying to act like they don't. Gradually, Kevin started helping with Phoenix's care. He learned to groom the horse, clean his stall, and assist with feeding. Tommy taught Kevin about Phoenix's special needs and how to help him with his daily exercises. The turning point came when Kevin witnessed Phoenix helping a younger child who was afraid of horses. An 8-year-old named Lisa had been placed in the program because she had selective mutism. She rarely spoke to anyone except her grandmother. Phoenix approached Lisa very slowly and gently, as if he sensed her fear. He lowered his head so she could pet his neck without feeling overwhelmed by his size. When Lisa finally smiled and whispered, "Good horse," Kevin saw tears in Tommy's eyes. "That's what Phoenix does," Tommy explained to Kevin later. "He helps people feel safe enough to take chances. That little girl hasn't talked to a stranger in months, but Phoenix made her feel like she could trust him." Kevin began to understand that taking care of Phoenix wasn't just about feeding and grooming. It was about being part of something that helped people heal from difficult experiences. By the end of his first year in the program, Kevin had decided he wanted to study animal science in college. His grades improved, his behavior problems disappeared, and he started helping Tommy train new volunteers. "You saved my life," Kevin told Tommy on graduation day. "You and Phoenix showed me that I could be good at something important." Tommy felt proud, but he also understood that he hadn't really saved Kevin. "You saved yourself," Tommy replied. "Phoenix and I just gave you a safe place to figure out how strong you already were." The Phoenix Foundation grew every year. They added more animals with special needs, a blind horse, a three-legged dog, a deaf cat, and served more kids from difficult backgrounds. Tommy became the program's director while still finishing high school, with plans to attend veterinary college on a scholarship Dr. Martinez had helped him secure. Media attention brought the program to national awareness. Tommy and Phoenix were featured in magazines and on television shows, sharing their story of how an abandoned boy and a disabled foal had helped each other survive and thrive. The most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. Jake, the farm worker who had made the decision not to kill Phoenix 3 years earlier, saw a news story about the program and contacted Helen and Robert. "I need to tell you something," Jake said when he visited the farm. "I'm the one who left that foal in the field. I was supposed to put him down, but I couldn't do it. I just left him there, hoping maybe someone would find him." Tommy looked at Jake with gratitude instead of anger. "You gave Phoenix a chance when no one else would. That makes you part of his story."